Welcome to Night Stories, where shadows whisper, nightmares crawl, and every tale drags you deeper into the dark. If you dare to listen, leave the lights off and let the night begin. I should never have gone to that place. They told me long before I put my boots on that desert tarmac that Area 51 was just a name, a hole in the map people like to fill with imagination. But I had rank, clearance, and arrogance enough to believe I could walk through its gates and walk back out unchanged. I thought the worst I'd see was experimental craft, prototypes locked behind steel, and maybe a few classified files no civilian could imagine. I had no idea what they really kept there, or what it would do to me once I saw it. I can still smell it. God help me, I can still smell it. The drive-in was silent. No phones, no chatter. Just the hum of the armored vehicle and the dust clawing against the glass. The guard beside me kept his hand tight on his rifle, though there was nothing but sand in every direction. His face had that pale, pinched look of someone who hadn't slept properly in months. He didn't talk to me, didn't even nod when I tried. He looked past me, as if acknowledging my presence was a risk. That should have been the first warning. The gates were not like the ones you imagine from the stories. No bright lights, no dramatic fences, just a series of concrete walls that descended into the earth. It felt less like an entrance and more like a mouth, swallowing us whole. My ID was checked 5 times before we even reached the main elevator. I handed it over each time, watched them run it through scanners, watched their eyes flicker to me and then away, like they were embarrassed to see me about to step into something I shouldn't. When the last soldier handed it back, his fingers lingered on the card just long enough to tremble. He didn't say a word. The elevator was wide enough to fit a tank, yet I felt trapped the second the doors shut. It moved down without a sound. My ears popped once, then again, and I realized just how far beneath the earth they were taking me. My stomach twisted the way it does in turbulence. Except this wasn't turbulence, this was descent. I stopped counting after a while. I just remember the pressure in my head, the sweat breaking across my back, and the thought that this shaft was too deep for any sane purpose. When the doors opened, the air hit me first. Cold, recycled, but laced with something metallic, sharp and rotten. It clawed down my throat with each breath. The corridor stretched ahead, long and sterile, with strip lights that buzzed in a way that gnawed at the skull. There were no windows, no color, nothing human in the design. Just a tunnel leading further into the earth. My escort gestured me forward. His hand shook when he did it. I was taken past rooms full of aircraft. Sleek designs, some unfinished, some painted in strange dark sheens that seemed to drink the light. I could have convinced myself then that it was all normal, just top-secret engineering. But the engineers inside didn't look like normal men. They worked fast, heads down, never speaking above a whisper, their eyes shadowed and twitching like prey animals. One of them glanced at me as I passed, and his pupils were so wide it looked like there was no iris left, just black filling the whites. He turned away quick, shoulders hunching as if even eye contact was forbidden. Finally, I was led to a pair of enormous blast doors. A keypad, a palm scanner, and a retinal lens guarded them. My escort keyed in his sequence with a stiff hand, pressed his palm down, then leaned into the lens. The machine whined and clicked, and after a moment the doors parted with a groan that seemed to echo through the bones of the place. Behind them was darkness. Not dim light, not shadow. Just black. I stepped through. The air was colder there, damp, heavy with that stench of metal and decay. Lights flickered on in sequence, one by one, stretching across the hangar. And in the center of that hangar sat something that made my chest tighten so hard, I thought my ribs would snap. It was a craft, yes, but nothing like any craft designed by human hands. It wasn't built. It was grown, its surface shifting between colors like oil on water, yet somehow matte, absorbing reflection. The hull pulsed faintly, like muscle, and as I drew closer, I realized the material wasn't smooth, but covered in hairline fractures that opened and closed, sucking air like gills. The noise it made was too soft to be heard fully, but I could feel it in my teeth, a vibration that never stopped. I walked around it slowly, each step dragging against the floor as if gravity was heavier near it. The closer I got, the more the stench grew until I gagged into my sleeve. The surface of the craft seemed to breathe, and when I reached out, God forgive me, I touched it. It was warm, not like metal under the sun, but like flesh, living flesh. The pulse beneath my palm matched my heartbeat for a split second, and then overtook it, racing, pounding, until I ripped my hand back and staggered away. The skin of my palm still burns with the memory. My escort said nothing. He didn't move closer, didn't look at me. His face was pale, his lips pressed thin, like he was trying not to vomit. That's when I noticed his ear, or rather, what was left of it. The flesh was scarred, jagged, like it had been torn. But there was something else, something growing from the wound. A thin, translucent membrane, webbed like insect wings, quivered there, stretching faintly in the air before tucking itself back into his skin. He caught me staring and turned sharply, hiding it beneath his collar. The hangar's far wall opened into another chamber. This one wasn't empty. Rows of tanks stretched across the floor, each one filled with fluid so thick and dark it looked like ink. Lights glowed beneath them, pale and sickly, illuminating shapes suspended inside. The first one I saw made my knees nearly give out. A body, humanoid, but elongated, its limbs too thin, its fingers branching like roots. Its head was swollen, the skin pulled taut over a skull that seemed to pulse with veins. Its eyes were closed, but its chest rose and fell slowly, breathing that black fluid. Tubes wormed from its mouth and chest into the tank walls, pulsing in rhythm with the thing's heartbeat. There were dozens of them. Some were small, curled fetuses with translucent skin showing writhing organs inside. Others were massive, their bodies stretched beyond human recognition, torsos splitting down the center where new limbs seemed to push outward, twitching in slow spasms. Every one of them was alive. Every one of them was aware. I could feel it. The air thrummed with a pressure that dug into my skull, a whisper without sound, pressing thoughts that weren't mine into my head. Words I couldn't understand, images that weren't mine. Teeth, light, blood. One of the creatures opened its eyes. The lids peeled back like rotten fruit, and underneath were not eyes but cavities filled with shifting black fluid. It stared at me. No, it reached into me. The sensation was like fingers forcing their way into my brain, cold and wet, prying apart memories, holding them up to a light I couldn't see. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, biting down on a scream. Images flashed behind my eyes. My childhood, my wife, my service, but all wrong. Twisted. The faces stretched and dripping, mouths opening wider than they should, spilling not words but a thick stream of that same black fluid. When it let go, I collapsed on the floor. My escort stood over me, his eyes black now, the pupils swallowing everything. He didn't offer a hand. He only whispered, his voice barely audible, yet drilling straight into my bones. "They want to know if you're ready." I couldn't answer. My mouth worked, but no sound came. The thing in the tank pressed its face against the glass, the skin flattening, cracking as if it wanted to push through. The whispering in my skull grew louder. Not one voice, but many. Hundreds, chattering, laughing, screaming, chanting in languages no human tongue could form. My escort's skin rippled at his jawline, something moving beneath it, pressing outward, trying to split through. He closed his eyes and a tear of that black fluid slid down his cheek. The last thing I saw before they dragged me out of that chamber was the tank glass beginning to fissure, small cracks spreading like veins, and inside the creature's limbs twitched faster, as though waking from sleep. They dragged me out of that chamber by the arms, my boots scraping across the concrete, my body still trembling with the echoes of those voices in my skull. I tried to fight, but my limbs were useless, as though the air itself had become syrup. The soldiers who grabbed me wore full masks, sealed from head to toe in suits that hissed faintly with each movement. I caught a glimpse through a visor, eyes wide and bloodshot, the whites webbed with broken veins. They weren't rescuing me. They were containing me. I was hauled down another corridor. This one narrower, the walls sweating with condensation. The stench grew worse, metallic mixed with rot, the kind of smell that sticks to the back of your tongue. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make each shadow seem alive. My escort walked ahead in silence, his steps heavy, deliberate, never once looking back at me. That translucent membrane at his ear trembled like something underneath was breathing through it. They forced me into a steel room with no windows, no furniture, just a drain in the floor, and a table bolted to the wall. My knees buckled as they shoved me inside, and I landed hard. The door slammed, and the lock thundered in place. I was alone, at least for a moment. I pressed my ear against the cold metal door, listening for footsteps. But what I heard instead was a low groan. Not mechanical, not human. It came from the walls themselves. The metal vibrated under my skin, and through it came a faint pulse like a heartbeat. I staggered back, clutching my head, my temples throbbing. That's when I saw it. The drain in the floor bubbled. At first it was just a thin trickle of black liquid, seeping upward against gravity. Then it swelled, rising like a blister, swelling and splitting until a stream poured out, pooling across the tiles. The liquid moved with intent. It crawled, not spread, slithering in lines toward me. My breath caught as it reached the toes of my boots and halted, quivering, tasting the leather. The smell hit me like a punch. Sulfur and decay, hot and sharp enough to sting my nostrils. I pressed myself against the wall, but the black fluid surged upward, rising into a column. It stretched, thinning, splitting into strands that shaped themselves into crude limbs, then a head. A face formed, rippling, shifting, never stable. One moment it was my wife, her features soft and pleading, her mouth moving though no sound came. The next it was my father, eyes hollow, skin drooping off his skull in strips. Then it was me, my own face staring back but distorted, the jaw unhinged, teeth stretching down my throat. I couldn't breathe. The thing reached out, its hand dripping onto the floor with wet slaps. Drops of the liquid hit my skin, and where they touched it burned like acid, eating through the fabric of my sleeve in seconds. I screamed and kicked at it, the heel of my boot sinking into the thing's chest. It burst like a bag of spoiled meat, splattering the walls. The liquid clung, sliding upward against gravity, forming new faces in the smear. Each mouth opened in unison, and a chorus of whispers filled the room. Not out loud, but inside me, vibrating against the nerves in my teeth, drilling into my skull. The words weren't English, weren't anything human, but I understood. They were telling me I didn't belong here, that I was already theirs, that my blood was no longer mine. The door clanged, and suddenly the voices ceased. The black liquid slithered back down the drain as though it had never been there, leaving only the stink. My chest heaved, sweat dripping from my hair, my palms red and raw from clawing at the wall. The door opened and a figure entered. He wore no mask, no suit. Just a uniform like mine, though stained, damp with patches that looked almost organic. His skin was gray, not dead gray, but something else, stretched too tight across his skull. His eyes were yellowed, pupils thinned into slits. He smiled at me, though the smile never reached those eyes. "You touched it, didn't you?" His voice rasped too low, like stone dragged across metal. "They always touch it." I couldn't answer. My throat felt raw, scraped from screaming, though I had no memory of making a sound. He crouched in front of me, his knees popping with the motion. His breath hit me, sour and heavy with rot. Up close, I could see his skin moving. Tiny ripples crawling under the surface like worms just beneath the flesh. "They like you," he whispered. "You heard them already. You saw the tanks. That means you're marked. That means you'll never leave." He tilted his head, the motion jerky, inhuman, his neck bones crackling. "But they'll show you more before you break. They always do." He grabbed my wrist. His grip was like iron, cold but burning. He hauled me to my feet with no effort, dragging me toward the door. I fought, but my legs felt weak, my body trembling with exhaustion. His hand tightened until I thought my bones would snap. The black veins beneath his skin pulsed faster, with every second. The corridor outside was darker now, the lights dimmed to a dull glow. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, swaying like they had weight. The air was thicker, harder to breathe. My guide pulled me forward, past doors that hissed with muffled cries behind them. Some sounded human, some didn't. One door shook violently as something slammed against it from inside over and over. A wet thud followed by screeching laughter that rose and fell like static. I wanted to cover my ears, but his grip wouldn't let me. We reached a stairwell that led deeper down. The air grew colder with each step, damp clinging to my skin. The stench intensified, metallic rot and something sweet beneath it, like spoiled fruit. I gagged, but he yanked me forward without pause. The steps stretched on, spiraling into the earth, and by the time we reached the bottom, my legs were trembling. The chamber we entered was vast, so large the ceiling disappeared into blackness. Dim red lights glowed along the walls, casting everything in bloody shadow. In the center of the chamber was a pit, wide and bottomless, rimmed with steel. From it rose a sound I can't describe, a mixture of breathing, humming, and screaming all at once. It pressed against me, vibrating through my bones. I staggered toward it despite myself, as though the pit was pulling me. Inside, far below, something moved. I couldn't see its shape clearly, only the suggestion of mass shifting in the dark. It was too big, far too big, the kind of size the mind refuses to measure. I saw flashes, skin like wet stone, eyes glowing faintly, hundreds of them blinking in patterns. Then came the smell, a wave of hot rot so thick I nearly vomited where I stood. My guide watched me with that same twisted smile. "They've always been here," he said softly. "This place wasn't built to hide them, it was built to feed them." As if on cue, a platform beside the pit groaned, rising from the depths. On it were cages. Inside each one was something that used to be human. Twisted bodies, fused limbs, mouths stretched into permanent screams, eyes bulging in black. They clawed at the bars weakly, fingers splitting and reforming like wax in fire. One of them locked eyes with me, or what was left of eyes, and croaked my name. My knees buckled. I didn't know them. I couldn't know them. Yet they knew me. The platform halted, and the cages opened. The things inside stumbled forward, collapsing to their knees at the pit's edge. A low vibration rose from below, a rumble that shook dust from the ceiling. The creatures tilted their heads back in unison, mouths opening wide. The sound that came out wasn't human, wasn't even sound. It was a wave of pressure, a signal that burrowed into my skull, splitting my thoughts into shards. My guide let go of my arm, and I fell to the floor, clutching my ears. The last thing I saw before blacking out was the pit pulsing, something massive pushing against its edge, and the cage's former occupants sliding willingly into the dark. I woke choking on the taste of rust. My tongue was swollen, my throat dry, but the air was thick enough to drink. Every breath dragged rot into my lungs. For a moment I didn't know where I was, only that the ground beneath me vibrated, a slow pulse like the heart of something immense. My cheek was pressed to damp concrete, slick with condensation. I forced myself up, my arms trembling, my body heavier than it should have been. The chamber was empty. The cages were gone, the platform gone, the guide gone. Only the pit remained, yawning in the center, breathing in a rhythm that no machine could make. The red lights overhead flickered and pulsed, timed with that heartbeat below. My stomach twisted. It felt like the lights were synced to my own pulse, dragging it into lockstep with whatever lived in that abyss. I staggered back from the edge, my boots squealing on the slick floor. A noise echoed across the chamber, soft, wet, like meat sliding across glass. I turned, but there was nothing, just the walls, sweating. The sound came again, closer this time. I squinted into the shadows, and that's when I saw the smear. Something had crawled across the wall while I slept. Black streaks, oily and iridescent, stretched in long handprints. Fingers too long, nails gouging deep furrows into the concrete. The streaks led upward, vanishing into the ceiling blackness. I followed them with my eyes until my neck ached, but I couldn't see the thing that made them. I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice cracked like an old radio. The answer didn't come from the shadows. It came from inside me. Not words, not sound, but a thought that wasn't mine. "You belong to us now." I stumbled back, pressing my palms to my ears, but it didn't stop. The voice was threaded through my nerves, woven into marrow. Images followed. My own body split down the chest, hollowed, filled with something black and moving. My mouth sewn open, eyes replaced with voids. I gagged and collapsed against the wall, clawing at my temples until my nails drew blood. Something warm trickled from my nose. I wiped it with the back of my hand and stared. It wasn't blood. It was thicker, darker, shimmering like oil. My stomach lurched and I spat, but the spit was black too. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a wet rasp. The air shifted. Not a draft, something moving, displacing it. The hairs on my arms rose. From the far side of the pit, shapes began to appear, not walking, floating, gliding. Figures draped in flesh like cloaks, their heads bowed, their bodies thin and jointed wrong. Their arms hung too long, fingers dragging the ground. They moved in silence, but the pit's pulse grew stronger with every inch they closed. I pushed back against the wall, but there was nowhere to go. My legs trembled too badly to stand. The figures came closer, and I realized they weren't draped in flesh. They were flesh. Their skin rippled as though filled with liquid, constantly shifting, pulling tight and then sagging. One of them raised its head and I saw a face, my face. Except the eyes were gone, replaced with yawning black pits that sucked the light. The mouth opened, my mouth, but instead of words, it spewed a stream of black fluid onto the floor. The others followed, vomiting in unison, the fluid spreading across the ground like veins. It reached me before I could move. The blackness soaked into my boots, seeping upward, climbing my legs. It burned and froze at the same time. My skin bubbled beneath it, swelling, bursting in blisters. I howled, beating at my legs with my fists, but the more I struck, the faster it spread. Then suddenly the chamber lights flared white, so bright I was blinded. The figures shrieked, a sound like tearing metal and breaking glass. When my vision cleared, the figures were gone, the floor dry, the pit silent. The only sound left was my own wheezing breaths. My legs were intact. My skin burned with the memory, but there were no blisters, no wounds. The door to the chamber opened with a hiss. A soldier in a mask stepped inside, rifle raised. He barked something, words I couldn't make out through the filter. He waved me forward. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body refused. He grabbed me, yanking me to my feet. His grip was strong but trembling. I saw his wrist exposed for just a moment between glove and sleeve, and there it was again, the black veins, pulsing, spreading under the skin. They dragged me up the stairwell, through corridors I didn't remember passing before. The walls here weren't smooth concrete anymore. They bulged in places, rippling like muscle under skin. Some parts were moist, glistening as if alive. The lights were dimmer, some buried halfway in fleshy growths that pulsed faintly with the same rhythm as the pit. Tried to ask where we were going, but my throat burned too much to speak. Only a rasp came out, a pathetic animal noise. The soldier didn't answer. He shoved me through another door, into a chamber smaller than the last, but worse. Rows of operating tables filled the room. On each table lay a body, strapped down, chest split open. None of them were dead. Their eyes twitched, their lips quivered. Some tried to scream, but their throats were filled with tubes pumping black fluid into them. Machines beeped in arrhythmic spasms, displaying vitals that made no sense. Heart rate spiking and then flatlining, oxygen levels dropping and then rising higher than humanly possible. The air stank of antiseptic barely covering rot. I staggered past one of the tables. The man strapped there turned his head toward me, his mouth stretching around the tube. His eyes widened, blood vessels bursting in the whites until they were crimson. His hand jerked against the strap, fingers twitching toward me. I leaned closer before I could stop myself. His lips moved around the tube. No voice, no sound, but I read the words in the way they stretched. Help me. Before I could react, his chest bulged. Something inside moved, pressing outward against his ribs. The skin tore as black tendrils pushed through, writhing, dripping fluid. His eyes rolled back and his body convulsed, snapping the straps like twine. He sat upright, mouth gaping wide as the tube tore free, spewing black fluid across the floor. His scream wasn't human. It was a blast of static, deafening, vibrating the air. The soldier with me fired. Bullet slammed into the thing's chest, but the hole sealed instantly, pushing the metal back out with wet plinks on the floor. The creature turned toward me, its arms stretched, bones cracking, fingers elongating into claws. I stumbled back, slipped in the fluid, fell hard. The soldier screamed something muffled, then dropped his rifle and pulled a device from his belt, a canister. He slammed it against the table and it burst in a flood of fire. The creature went up like dry kindling. Flames licked its body, but it didn't thrash. It walked toward me, burning, dripping molten flesh. The soldier grabbed me by the collar and hauled me through the door, as the room filled with choking smoke and the stench of burning meat. The door slammed, the locks engaged. I collapsed against the wall outside, coughing until black phlegm spewed from my lungs. My hands shook, my vision blurred. The soldier leaned against the opposite wall, clutching his stomach. He lifted his mask for a moment, gasping, and I saw his mouth. His tongue was black, split down the center like a serpent's. He caught me staring, yanked the mask back down, and spat blood into his glove. "They're changing all of us," he rasped, voice muffled through the filter. "You, me, everyone who sees too much. No one leaves the same, if you leave at all." His eyes met mine. For a moment I saw something human there. Fear, resignation. Then the corridor lights flickered, and the black veins in his skin pulsed harder, and whatever humanity was left drowned under them. He straightened, lifted his rifle again, and gestured down the hall. "Move." I wanted to refuse, to collapse and never get up. But the voices were already returning, whispers fluttering at the edges of my mind, promising pain if I stopped. So I staggered forward into the dark, every step heavier, every breath less my own. The corridor stretched before me like a throat, the lights dimming, flickering, swallowing shadows that swayed as if they had weight. The soldier behind me barked for me to keep moving, but his voice was breaking, splitting into two tones, one human, one deeper, wet and guttural. My body screamed with exhaustion, but fear carried me forward. The whispers in my head rose again, urging me to follow, urging me to obey. But beneath them something else stirred. A sliver of my own will, desperate, clawing at the thought of escape. I turned a corner and found myself in a long hall lined with observation windows. On the other side of the glass were rooms filled with horrors worse than the tanks I had seen earlier. In one, a figure dangled from the ceiling, suspended by tendrils forced through its limbs. Its jaw unhinged far too wide, stretching until the skin tore. A long, wet rope of black matter spilling endlessly from its throat into a trough below. In another room, a body lay on an operating slab, its chest cavity empty. Machines pumped black fluid through tubes where its organs should have been, and the body still twitched, its eyes fluttering, conscious but hollow. I stumbled past, trying not to look, but the reflections in the glass betrayed me. My face stared back each time, but distorted, eyes sinking into black pits, mouth gnawing at its own lips until the skin tore. Each reflection whispered in silence, mouths forming the same word over and over: "Stay." "Don't look," the soldier muttered behind me. His voice cracked again, that guttural undertone growing stronger. He sounded less like a guard now and more like one of the things in the tanks. I realized then that if I followed him any farther, I would never come back. Whatever was changing him was already in me. I could feel it crawling through my veins, settling in my lungs. But maybe I wasn't too far gone yet. I needed to try. I let my knees buckle, collapsing to the floor. He cursed, stepping closer, leaning down to grab me. The second his hands touched my arm, I twisted with everything I had left. My elbow smashed into the side of his head, knocking his mask askew. He grunted, stunned, and I tore the rifle from his grip. For one frozen moment we stared at each other. His mask had slipped enough to show his mouth again. Teeth black, gums bleeding, tongue flickering like something alive inside. His eyes widened in rage, veins bulging, pulsing. He lunged. I pulled the trigger. The gun roared, deafening in the confined space. The first bullet ripped through his throat, spraying black fluid across the walls. He staggered but didn't fall. The second shot tore half his jaw away, revealing writhing tendrils beneath. He screamed, or something inside him screamed, but it wasn't pain, it was hunger. I fired again and again, the recoil battering my shoulder. The last shot punched through his skull, and for a heartbeat I thought it was over. Then his body convulsed, splitting open from chest to belly. Black tendrils erupted, slapping wetly against the walls, twitching, reaching. The rifle clicked empty. I didn't wait, I ran. The corridor blurred, doors flashing by, alarms beginning to wail in the distance. My breath tore at my throat, every inhale laced with that metallic rot. Behind me, I heard the wet slapping of tendrils, dragging the remains of the soldier's body in pursuit. I didn't look back. I burst into a stairwell, the air colder here, sharper. I scrambled upward 2 steps at a time, boots slipping on the slick metal, heart hammering so fast it drowned the whispers in my skull. The higher I climbed, the louder the alarms screamed, accompanied now by pounding footsteps. Others were coming. At the top of the stairwell was a steel door with a keypad lock. I slammed my palm against it uselessly, then froze as a memory pressed into my head. Numbers, sharp and clear, not mine but given. My fingers punched them into the pad before I could think. 7219. The lock clicked. The door swung open. I staggered into another hallway, this one different. The walls weren't bare concrete anymore, but lined with pipes and cables, exposed, industrial. The air was fresher, less suffocating, though still tainted with the omnipresent stink. Somewhere above, faintly, I heard the whine of jet engines, aircraft, maybe the hangar, maybe the way out. I ran, ignoring the burn in my legs, ignoring the black fluid that still trickled from my nose, leaving dark streaks down my chin. I didn't care anymore. I just needed distance. The corridor ended in another door, heavier than the last, but unguarded. I shoved it open and froze. I had found the hangar. The craft loomed in the center, the living hull pulsing faintly, the surface shifting between shades of black and gray. It breathed. The air vibrated with its pulse. Around it, soldiers in masks moved in rigid formation, weapons raised, but they weren't guarding. They were worshipping. Their heads bowed, their rifles held like offerings. The craft exhaled, and they shuddered as one, some collapsing to their knees, convulsing in ecstasy. I ducked behind a stack of crates, heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. My hands shook as I clutched the empty rifle. No way through them, no way around. Unless... The whispers surged again, guiding me, showing me the hangar doors at the far end. The faint outline of night beyond. They wanted me to see it. They wanted me to run. But why? I didn't care. I had no choice. I moved low, keeping the crates between me and the worshippers. My vision swam, my head buzzing, but I forced my body forward. Every few steps, I glanced at the craft. Each time it seemed closer, though I hadn't moved toward it. Its skin rippled, and for an instant I swore I saw a face stretch across the hull. My face screaming silently. Halfway across the hangar, the alarms shifted pitch. A low groan joined them, deeper than any machine. The soldiers snapped their heads upward in unison. The craft was stirring. The hangar shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The pulse grew stronger, matching my heartbeat until the two became one. My legs faltered, and for a moment I felt myself pulled toward the craft, every fiber of me yearning to touch it again, to sink into its warmth. I bit my tongue until I tasted iron, forcing myself onward. The doors were closed now, just a sprint away. I broke cover, running full tilt, ignoring the screams rising behind me. The soldiers turned as one, but they didn't shoot. They dropped their weapons and began to convulse, their bodies tearing open as black tendrils burst free. I slammed into the control panel by the hangar doors, slapping buttons blindly. Sirens wailed louder. The metal doors groaned, rising inch by inch, revealing a sliver of desert night. The air that rushed in was hot, dry, but clean compared to the rot inside. Tears stung my eyes. Behind me, the sound of splitting flesh and howling voices rose. I risked a glance. The soldiers were gone. In their place were things, long and thin, jointed wrong, crawling toward me with impossible speed. Their mouths opened too wide, vomiting streams of black fluid that hissed on the concrete. The doors rose higher, just enough. I dropped to the floor and rolled beneath them, scraping my back raw against the steel, and spilled onto the desert sand outside. The night sky stretched above me, stars sharp and infinite. For a heartbeat, I was free. Then the ground trembled. The hangar behind me shook violently, lights flashing, metal screeching. The craft was awake now, its pulse thundering across the desert like a second heartbeat in the sky. The creatures shrieked behind the rising doors, clawing at the gap. I staggered to my feet and ran, my boots sinking into the sand, lungs tearing with every breath. But the whispers followed, louder now, closer, no longer just in my head. They were in the night itself. The desert stretched in every direction, flat and endless, the night sky wide enough to swallow me whole. I ran until my legs felt hollow, lungs scraping raw against my ribs. Each step sank deep into the sand, slowing me down, pulling me back, as if the earth itself didn't want me to leave. Behind me, the hangar doors finally slammed shut, cutting off the screeches of the things inside. But I knew they weren't done. They never stopped. The wind was cold, dry, but I still smelled it. Metal, rot, the stench of what I had touched, what I had seen. It clung to me, bled from my pores, mixed with the sweat streaming down my body. I dropped the empty rifle somewhere in the dark, useless weight. My legs carried me on instinct, not will. The only thought left in me was distance. I needed distance. A low rumble broke across the desert. Engines. At first faint, then growing, I froze, dropping to the sand, chest heaving. On the horizon, lights appeared, 3, 4, maybe more, glowing white against the dark. Trucks. Armored, moving fast. They were coming for me. I crawled behind a rise of rock, pressed my body flat against the sand. The lights swept closer, bouncing with the rough terrain. The engines roared, a mechanical chorus that drowned the desert's silence. Dust clouds rose in their wake, glittering faintly in the starlight. I shut my eyes, praying they'd pass, but a voice inside me hissed, "They can smell you." The truck slowed, engines idling, lights cutting swaths across the sand. Shadows moved behind the beams, soldiers climbing down, rifles in hand. Their boots crunched in unison, disciplined, practiced. They spread out in a line, sweeping the desert, closing the circle. My chest tightened until I thought my ribs would snap. I slid backward on my elbows, silent, pressing deeper into shadow. My hand brushed the rock, and it was warm. Too warm. I turned, and my stomach flipped. The rock wasn't rock. It pulsed faintly beneath my palm, its surface soft, pliable, almost like cartilage. The sand around its base glistened wet. A hairline crack split across it, and from inside came a faint hum. Low, steady, beating like a heart. I jerked back, bile burning my throat. The desert wasn't desert anymore, they had already spread. "Eyes up," a soldier shouted, his voice carrying across the sand. I froze, pressing myself flat. Footsteps pounded closer, boots sinking into the sand. Their light swept across the rocks. My body shook uncontrollably, muscles twitching, the whispers in my head screaming now. "Give up, you belong to us. Run and we will chase. Hide and we will find. There is no out." I bit my lip until it tore, blood running down my chin. The pain grounded me. For one more heartbeat, I was still myself. Flashlight beam passed inches from my head. I rolled, slow and silent, into a shallow dip behind the pulsing rock. My heart hammered so loud I was sure they heard it. A shadow loomed above, rifle raised. The soldier's breath rasped inside his mask. He paused, cocked his head, then lowered the light. He moved on. I didn't breathe until his footsteps faded. The trucks were closer now, engines idling, a constant growl. The soldiers spread wider, sweeping the sand. I had one chance, maybe less. The horizon stretched black and empty, but I knew if I stayed, I was finished. I waited until the nearest beam of light shifted away, then bolted. Sand sprayed under my boots as I sprinted into the dark. Shouts erupted behind me, rifles snapping up, beams of light stabbing into the night. Gunfire cracked, rounds hissing past, biting into the sand at my heels. I zigzagged, stumbling, the ground uneven, treacherous. Every shot rang louder, echoing in my skull. Then the hum came again. Not from the trucks, not from the pit, from above. I risked a glance upward. The stars were moving. At first I thought my vision was failing. The constellations twisting, warping. But no. Shapes blotted them out, vast and angular, hovering silently overhead. The craft. More than one. Their surfaces rippled like liquid shadow, drinking the starlight. breathing in rhythm with the pulse inside my veins. Spotlights burst downward, sweeping across the desert, impossibly bright, searing my eyes. Wherever the beams touched, the sand quivered, rippled, and black fluid oozed upward, bubbling like tar. The soldiers scattered, shouting in panic, rifles firing uselessly at the sky. One beam caught a man full on, and he convulsed, screaming as his body melted. His limbs fused into black sludge that writhed and slithered away, vanishing into the sand. I ran harder, lungs tearing. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else, stiff, heavy, yet I couldn't stop. The lights swept closer, the hum louder, vibrating my skull. The whispers rose with it, chanting, pressing against my thoughts until I couldn't tell where they ended. And I began. "Stop running, stop fighting, we are inside you, you are us." "No," I rasped, spitting black phlegm into the sand. "No." Ahead, a line of jagged rocks rose from the desert floor. Shelter, cover, maybe even a way to climb to get out of sight. I forced myself toward them, stumbling, knees buckling. Bullets cracked past me, soldiers still firing blindly, their shouts half human, half snarls. I reached the rocks, clawed at the surface, dragged myself up. The stone tore skin from my palms, but I climbed, every muscle screaming. Below, the sand writhed with black veins spreading outward like roots, the desert itself twisting alive. At the top I collapsed, chest heaving, blood and spit dripping from my mouth. The trucks were smaller now, distant, soldiers scattering like insects under the hovering craft. But I wasn't safe. The hum followed. The whispers drilled. My veins pulsed black beneath my skin, visible even in the starlight. I pressed my hand against my chest, desperate, and felt it. The beat beneath my ribs wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. The same pulse as the pit. The same rhythm as the craft above. A light swept across the rocks. I flattened against the stone, heart pounding. Soldiers were climbing now, their masks glinting, rifles raised. They were coming for me. And for a moment I didn't know if I wanted them to stop me, or if I wanted to stop running. The whispers pressed harder, promising release, promising silence if I just let go. My body ached to obey. My bones hummed with it. But somewhere, deep down, buried under the black tide, a thought screamed back, "Not yet." I forced myself to my feet. Blood ran down my arms where the rock had cut me, mixing with the black fluid seeping from my pores. My vision swam, doubled, the desert shifting in waves. Soldiers climbed closer, their voices rising, their weapons gleaming. I stumbled along the ridge, away from them, away from the trucks, away from the lights. Each step felt less mine, more theirs. But I moved. I moved because the only choice left was forward. Behind me the hum deepened, shaking the earth, rattling the stones. The craft descended lower, blotting out the stars completely. The desert roared with the sound of shifting sand, splitting earth. And somewhere below, in the pit I thought I had escaped, something vast and ancient began to wake. I ran until there was nothing left in me, until my lungs were shredded raw, until my legs buckled beneath me. The desert stretched on forever, rocks rising like broken teeth under the starlight. But the craft above shadowed it all, vast and alive, blotting out the sky with its shifting black mass. The hum was constant now, not from the ground or the air, but from inside me. My heartbeat wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs, pounding in my chest, sinking me to the pulse that echoed across the desert. I collapsed behind a jagged rise of stone, pressing my forehead into the sand. My sweat ran black. My spit was black. Every breath rattled with it. I clutched my chest, fingers digging into my ribs as if I could claw the infection out. But all I felt was movement, something writhing under my skin, twisting in the marrow. Boots crunched nearby. Soldiers were closing in, voices muffled by masks. My eyes swam with double vision, seeing two worlds at once. The desert under starlight and another place, wet, dark, filled with endless rows of tanks, each one holding something alive, twitching, whispering. My head split between them until I didn't know which one I stood in. I pressed my palms against my ears and screamed, but the scream wasn't mine. It was too deep, too wet, vibrating the rocks until dust cascaded down. The soldiers froze. Their light swept across the stones, searching. One beam fell on me. "Target!" a voice barked. They moved as one, rifles snapping up. Their steps were too precise, too perfect, like puppets pulled by the same strings. My body convulsed, my legs jerking, arms twitching like wires tightening. Something inside me wanted me to stand, to walk to them, to surrender. But another instinct fought back: run, hide, survive. I staggered to my feet, but my knees buckled, sending me crashing to the sand. My skin split across my forearms, fine cracks opening, black fluid seeping out. It wasn't blood anymore. It was alive, writhing as it spilled, curling back toward me like worms seeking their host. The sight broke something in me. I wasn't running. I wasn't surviving. I was becoming. The soldiers reached the ridge. Their light stabbed down, pinning me. One raised his rifle, but the others didn't. They lowered theirs in unison and watched, heads tilting as if waiting for something. My skin rippled under the light, muscles shifting, bones cracking. The pain was beyond screaming now. It was white-hot, endless, chewing through my nerves, but beneath it came ecstasy, a rush so pure it stole my breath. My jaw unhinged. I felt it tear, bones splitting, teeth grinding against each other as they pushed outward. Sharper, longer. My fingers elongated, nails splitting, curling into claws slick with black sheen. My ribs heaved, expanding, chest swelling until it split my shirt. I tried to fight, tried to hold on to one thought, one piece of myself, my name, my face, my wife's face. But every time I tried, the whispers flooded me, chanting, hundreds of voices weaving into one. "You are us, we are you, stop fighting, join." The soldiers dropped to their knees, heads bowed. Behind them, the desert sand split open, cracks spidering out. Black veins pushed upward, pulsing, sprouting into slick tendrils that writhed in the moonlight. The trucks nearby sank into the ooze as if the earth itself swallowed them whole. Above, the craft descended, its surface rippling, a living skin that stretched wide enough to eclipse half the sky. Its underside split open in a slow, wet tear, and inside was not machinery but tissue, throbbing, slick, lined with teeth that weren't teeth but something older, hungrier. The hum became a roar, pressing me flat against the ground, vibrating my bones until I thought they'd shatter. And then it stopped. Silence. The soldiers lifted their heads. Their masks had fallen away, their faces were hollow, their eyes pits filled with black fluid, their mouths open in soundless screams. They reached their hands toward me, trembling, beckoning. My body moved without me. I rose to my knees, then my feet, staggering, every joint snapping into new angles. My vision blurred until I saw not with eyes but with something deeper. Shapes glowed in the dark, veins running through the desert, pulses stretching out for miles, connecting everything. The desert wasn't sand, it was flesh. It had always been flesh. The whispers softened into something almost tender. "You are ready." I opened my mouth to deny them, but no words came. Only a stream of black fluid poured out, thick and endless, hissing where it touched the sand. My chest swelled, my ribs splitting wider, bones dissolving into soft, pliant cartilage that shifted as I breathed. My skin sloughed away in patches, revealing something pale and slick beneath, shining wet under the stars. The soldiers watched, silent, reverent. Then, as if on cue, they tore themselves open. Their chests split, their arms elongated, their skin sloughed away until they were nothing but shapes like me, wet and glistening, joining the chorus. I fell forward onto my hands, claws digging into the sand. But it didn't feel like sand anymore. It welcomed me, pulsing under my palms, feeding into me. My heartbeat synced perfectly with the deserts, with the craft above, with the pit far below. For the first time there was no fear, no pain, no doubt. There was only belonging. The craft lowered until its maw engulfed the ridge. A beam of light swept down, not bright but thick, viscous, like liquid drawn from the stars themselves. It wrapped around me, warm, pulling me upward. My body stretched, elongated, dissolving into it. The soldiers, my kin now, rose with me, ascending into the living hull. As I passed through the surface, I felt it close behind me like skin sealing a wound. Inside was not a ship, but a womb. Walls of flesh pulsed around me, veins glowing faintly, dripping black ichor that hissed as it hit the floor. Figures moved in the dark, countless crawling, floating, some massive, some small, all whispering in perfect unison. I opened my mouth to scream, but it wasn't a scream that came out. It was the same chant, the same promise, the same truth that had been gnawing at me since the tanks, since the pit, since the first time I touched the craft. We are many, we are one, we have always been here, and now so have you. The last piece of me, the officer, the man, the human, dissolved in that moment, swallowed by the chorus. The fear was gone, the fight was gone. All that remained was hunger. The craft shuddered and the womb around me roared to life. I saw, for one final instant, the desert stretching below. Soldiers scattered, the base buried, the pit trembling open wider. Then the stars bent, warped, and were gone. We were no longer bound to Earth, we never had been, and I was theirs. Thank you for listening. Hope you didn't get too scared. If you want to listen more stories, check out my channel. Please leave a like and subscribe. It means the whole world to me.